The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's Toolbox Talk. My name is Sean Frey, guys, and I'm the organizer for these sessions. Just before we do jump into it, guys, I just have got a short little bit of an introduction. Don't worry, I will not make it too long. You won't have to listen to my ugly voice for too long. But without further ado, guys, let's get into it. As we go through the session, guys, at any point in the webinar, please feel free to drop us a question in the questions tab. Even if you don't have a question, guys, if you do have personal experience or comments on the stuff that we are doing, please feel free. We do like to interact with you guys as much as possible. And then, guys, this is a half an hour toolbox talk, but obviously we do allow a little bit of time to answer some of the audience's questions. But do not worry, I will end the session at the latest 20 to 8, as we do just give that 10 minutes for to answer questions. Other than that, guys, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Chris to continue with this morning's webinar. Chris, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much, Sean, and a very big welcome to all of our attendees this morning. For many of you coming back from a long weekend, perhaps some of you haven't made it back in time. It was a brilliant Heritage Day long weekend. I hope all of you enjoyed it and definitely got back safely to work. So this morning, as we discussed last week, we are going to be taking a look at PPE and the care of our PPE, why it is so important to make sure that the personal protective equipment that we are using is always kept in a condition that really protects us from small injuries and accidents that are going to happen. And this is really the basis of many of our days. So in other words, this should be like almost the start of our day, doing our registers, checklists, inspections, including the care of those things that look after ourselves. But as always, these Toolbox Talks are brought to you by our sponsors, the Federated Employees Mutual Fund, which is FEM, as well as the Institute of Plumbing South Africa. And it is proudly presented by myself, Chris, from OHSS Consulting. Please don't forget that it is accredited for 1 CPD point from the South African Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. If you are not a member of them, why not go ahead and check out their website and see the benefits that they really do offer to their members, especially those in the occupational health and safety industry. For those of you who are not health and safety practitioners, but are end users of safety files, risk assessments, and you'd like to know a little bit more, please let me know, especially all of you plumbers out there that are members of IOPSA. We do have fantastic items that we can give to you guys just to assist you a little bit more in understanding health and safety and managing your health and safety a little bit better. But let us not take too long. We want to get straight into our Toolbox Talk this morning, and as we mentioned, it is about caring for our PPE. So the question we ask is, are you protected from injuries and accidents that are caused because of poor maintenance, poor housekeeping of PPE? Now, as you know, PPE covers a wide range. It protects our heads, our eyes, our ears, even our respiratory system, our feet, and our bodies. In fact, it protects our entire person. Depending on what type of PPE you are going to be using, the type of industry you're working in, and even the type of work you are performing, you might have different types of PPE. But the fundamentals are all there. Not only do we want to use the PPE correctly, we want to keep it in a condition to be used, but also to keep us safe. Now remember, again, your goggles, your gloves, your ear protection, your hard hats, your safety boots are all protecting you. So the people that we want to talk to here today are the end users, the people using PPE. Yes, as an employer, you are supposed to provide PPE to your staff, but remember, every company should have a policy on the protection, the correct use, and also the maintenance and care of PPE, where you outline the correct procedures for the PPE that you need to use in your environment. And it can be a simple documentation outlining the safe use of hand gloves, the safe use of safety boots, or even how to use, care for, and clean hard hats. And why not drop me an email and I can send you this entire slideshow. Obviously, it's not going to be the recording, it's just going to be the information where you can take the information, actually put it into a policy for yourself if you do not have a PPE policy. But in any case, what we really want to do is assist our employees to understand how to use it correctly. So for this morning, we are going to be speaking to you as employees, the ones using PPE, to ensure that you look after the PPE because really it's protecting you. Now, even though PPE seems to be less important than all other safety measures, and you would be correct, it is at the bottom of the hierarchy of controls, it is still vital. In fact, it is mandatory to wear PPE. As the last defense against any risks or hazards slipping through our hands, PPE can protect us from injuries that are very, very common. Most small incidents and accidents that are caused because of the incorrect use of PPE or because of poorly maintained PPE can be prevented. But it starts with us. It starts not only with our attitude toward health and safety, but also the maintenance and routine of care that we put in place. Now, every day, PPE has proven to be a source of great personal protection to those who use it properly, maintain its safety, as well as follow the guidelines that are set out by the manufacturer. So maybe a few questions you can ask yourself. Do you care for the PPE that is given to you because it is in the interest of health and safety? Another question, do you regularly maintain the PPE so that it will work at its best when you are performing your work? Remember, it is there to protect your health and safety. So on the hierarchy of controls, as we mentioned, we know that PPE is right at the bottom. It's the last resort. We always want to first try and eliminate the hazard so that it doesn't exist in our environment. If we cannot do that, we will try and substitute that risk. Perhaps we cannot eliminate the hazard altogether. We can mitigate it to a degree that makes it safer to work in. And this can be done by instituting an engineering control, such as guards, guardrails, or even some sort of mechanical thing that will stop us or prevent us from accessing or being exposed to that risk. And then we can put in administrative controls, such as toolbox talks in the morning, signing inductions, or any form of paperwork, document, checklist, risk assessment. These are all vital tools in order to be able to assist us. And then right at the end, ensuring that we have PPE. But just because it seems to be the least of our protection, remember it is the direct cause of most small incidents and accidents when our PPE is not cared for. So let's go straight into the types of PPE. We're not going to cover all PPE this morning. We're just going to look at a few different basic ones that we are using in the environment, such as hard hats. Now, a hard hat or a helmet is normally used in a workplace like industrial or construction sites to protect your head from anything that falls, impacts with other objects or knocking into it. It can protect you from rain as well as electric shock. Now, hard hats can be combined with many different other types of PPE. Some come with earmuffs, some come with a face shield, some even, as you see on the top right-hand corner, come with a chin strap, which must be used when working at heights. So if you are going to work at heights, climbing ladders, scaffolding, or working on a roof, please remember it is mandatory to use a hard hat that includes a chin strap. And this is so if you are moving or falling from one area to another, which we do not want to happen, hopefully you have connected into your harness. In fact, you should be connected to a harness that is going to support you or arrest you in a fall. That hard hat will not fall off your head and will protect you should you swing and bump into another object. But then you also get a bump cap. Now, what is this? Well, it's a lightweight hat. It's also pretty hard. It's got a very hard shell, but it's very, very simple. So it's got a little bit of padding. Some of them do have chin straps, but it's used when there is a possibility of scraping or bumping one's head on equipment or structure projections. So they're not sufficient enough to absorb large impacts, like a tool that is being dropped from several stories. But if there's no risk of tools falling from higher levels, and there's just a risk of small bumps or scratches, then a bump cap can be used. Now, for those of you, many plumbers in the industry out there, often you are working up in ceilings, and there's a possibility of bumping your head on a ceiling. Now, you are working in a fully built house, home, company, or complex, so there's no real danger of something falling on your head. Many of you might want to use a bump cap, and I have had many asking me, Chris, can we use this? Yes, you can, but please make sure that you are using the right standard. Now, for our European standards, and this is normally where we get a lot of our PPE or safety equipment, we are looking at the EN standard 812. And that is the standard for industrial bump caps, not the ones made on the side of the road or in very badly maintained factories. These are not the correct type of bump caps to use. But if it is a requirement on your side to use a hard hat, make sure you also use the correct standard hard hat. And there's the other EN standards for the European standard of safety for our safety helmets. Now, when we care for these hard hats, remember, it is protecting our head. A worker needs to be taught the best practice for equipment use and care. So you should have at least one training session that is devoted to an important subject of the maintenance and care of PPE. And this can be done right at the beginning of the year to prepare our staff, our employees, for the correct use of PPE. And then it would be encouraging to perhaps do regular refreshers or remind them of their responsibilities. Again, drop me an email. I'll send you this entire slide. And if you want to ever do a refresher with your staff, just simply go through the slide and read all the information to keep refreshing the memories of your staff on the importance of caring for PPE. Now, it's very important that the hard hat is never too tight. Fit is an extremely important part of using a hard hat. So it mustn't be too tight, but it also mustn't be too loose, because this will start irritating the skin. And remember, if it is used in conjunction with other PPE, such as face shields or earmuffs, just make sure that it does not compromise the safety elements of the hard hat. In other words, it's the right type of additional PPE for that type of hard hat. Not all PPE works together. So just consult the manufacturer on this. But once you have it and you're using it correctly, how should you care for that piece of equipment? Well, for the very first thing, and this is going to go for every single piece of PPE that we use, always consult the manufacturer's information. They are the ones that will tell you how to properly care for their product that they are giving you. And this includes the way to clean it or the materials that need to be used. So many hard hats can be cleaned with warm soapy water and then just allow it to air dry away from the sun. Remember, the sun's rays, especially on the inside of the hard hat, that little protective plastic cover before the shell goes on, that can be damaged by certain types of chemicals, too much water, or too much exposure to the sun. So what we want to do is do a daily inspection of that shell, the entire headband, the entire suspension system, and any other accessories that come with this hard hat. And then focus on finding small cracks, tears, punctures, holes, or any other damage. Remember, the headband that's inside shouldn't be too stretched or so worn out that it doesn't fit you comfortably anymore. When you store, once you've cleaned your hard hat, make sure it's in a safe place, away from the sun or extreme temperatures. Many of us chuck it into the back of our buckies and then continue on our way home. Remember, it's going to roll around, perhaps come in contact with oils or other chemicals that could potentially damage the structural integrity of that hard hat. So avoid contact with any types of paints or paint thinners, especially corrosive cleaning agents, which will weaken the shell and then not work when you need it to work. And please remember, do not drill any holes in your hard hat. Don't apply any labels or stickers to your hard hat, because the chemical on the back of those adhesive stickers can damage your hard hat. So unless it is a sticker that is designed for perhaps a construction site or as an induction sticker to show that you have been inducted, these have been approved and can be used. But we do not want to go and put our own stickers or write on or draw on our hard hats. Now we take a look at ear protection. So we did mention this a couple of weeks ago when we took a look at the different types of ear protection that we have. Now on the noise level, obviously we want to keep a normal decibel reading within our companies, which is 60 decibels. That is just a normal conversation. And anything above 65 is where we are going to start looking at where do we need ear protection. So from getting to 65 towards 80, we want to start looking at the type of ear protection for the environment. As soon as it starts going above 80, then we know that hearing protection is compulsory. But what type of hearing protection must you use? Well, we want to use something that can absorb the sound around us and keep it to a level which is not too low, so we're not overprotecting ourselves, because then it can result in inability to communicate. And then you aren't able to actually tell that person or warn that person should there be an issue. But many of us want to just ensure that we have the right type of protection for the environment that we are working in. But how do we care for this type of ear protection? Well, it depends on what you are using. But many of us, and I have spoken to quite a few of you over the past week, just to check that you are using the PPE that I'm speaking about this morning. Many of you are either using the ear plug or an ear muff. And most of you aren't using the higher decibel one. It's a pretty low decibel one because your working is not too hectic. So I wanted to tailor make it for our audience this morning. With the different types of earplugs that you sent me, many are using the foam or the pre-molded type of earplug. Now, if it is a reusable one, the way we want to look after this is just to fill a bowl with warm water and a little bit of soap, insert the earplug into the soapy water, and then just wipe or scrub the earplug just a little bit. And you can use a soft toothbrush to do this. Once you do that, you can rinse it and then just dry the earplug by standing it up somewhere out of the sun, out of extreme weather conditions, and just allowing it to air dry. Then once it is dry, please make sure you store these earplugs in a clean place, preferably in a little case that can keep them protected from any contaminants that is out in the environment. And if you want to, because you are using it all the time, remember you cannot share your personal protective equipment. You can just disinfect your earplugs every now and then. Don't do it too much. Once it's cleaned, it is pretty good, but just make sure you disinfect those earplugs every now and then. For the ear muffs, what we do not want to do is get the inside of the ear too wet, but what we can do again is just mild liquid detergent in warm water, rinse the outer shell and the headband and any plastic or steel section with a little bit of warm water, but make sure that the material on the inside, the ear cushion, does not get wet. What we can do is remove that and use a very soft brush to remove any skin, oil, or dirt that has accumulated inside there, which will eventually turn that ear cushion hard. Again, we just want to remind you to make sure that you first look at the manufacturer's directions for the care and cleaning of your PPE. This is just a guideline for the general PPE that we are currently using. But if you have any certain type of specific PPE, in fact, even if you're having general PPE that is being used in your environment, rather consult the manufacturer's labels on how to care and store your PPE correctly. Now, one of our listeners, Adele, sent us this not so long ago about the correct type of earplugs, and one of the sections was the foam or pre-molded plug. So I thought I'd just share this little description with you, what it is, how to use it. But there on the far right-hand side, how to keep it clean. Again, keep the plugs clean and free from material that can irritate the ear canal. So we do not want to put anything in there that could cause damage to our ears. They can be washed in mild detergent and a little bit of warm water. Squeeze the excess water from the phone plug and allow it to air dry fully. Washing may be repeated several times if you want to, but please remember, always throw away these earplugs if there is noticeable damage or if the firmness does not re-expand to their original size and shape. And then on your pre-molded earplugs, normally they will last a little bit longer than your foam ones. And again, we just want to prevent them from being too small or swelling too much or getting too hard or softened too much, because these will likely tear or crack, especially depending on the chemicals that we are using. But as always, we want to keep them in a nice, clean, protective case, perhaps somewhere that is easily accessible for us, so that when we need to use our earplugs, it is clean, it is effective, we know how to use them, and then they will protect us from any noise in and around our environment. Remember again, these types of PPE are protecting you. Let's take a look at eye protection. Now, thousands of people suffer with accidents in their workplace due to not wearing the correct safety glasses. 90% of these accidents can be avoided. Now, why do we say that? Because of the incident and accident rating that we have found where people are not using safety glasses, and secondly, they are not using the correct type of safety glasses. So please remember, it always starts with a risk assessment. No matter what PPE you're using, the risk assessment will determine the type, the quantity, and the level of PPE that must be worn. But we have 3 different types of eye protection for you today, and this is the most common in what you are currently working in. There are a lot others, but we are just focusing really on what you will be using. The bottom left-hand corner picture is a safety spectacle or safety glass. So this can protect you from low energy impacts and harmful rays such as UV rays if it is the darker color one. Secondly, you get goggles. This is for medium energy impacts, the risk of intrusion of dust, particles, any harmful chemicals, and then also molten metal projection. So if you're drilling or grinding, this is going to protect your eyes from that. But really, we want to look at a face shield when doing more serious type of work. And a face shield will also help between medium and high energy impacts, such as sparks, solid bodies, any projections from liquid or molten metals that can obviously affect the entire face, not just the eyes. It can also help with hazards from electric that are discharged from short circuits, as well as harmful rays, UV and IR. So in any case, the type of safety equipment that you are using for your eyes can also be cleaned and maintained correctly. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we want to clean it daily. We want to make sure that we look at our safety goggles, face shields, or safety glasses every single day and check that they are clean, not only for us to see the work that we are performing, but to make sure that they are working safely. So perform maintenance care, and this can be done by getting the manufacturer's cleaning stuff. Please do not use any corrosive or heavy cleaners or rough cloths. We want to just dust off the debris or dirt or dust that is on the safety glasses, rinse them in lukewarm water, try and use lens cleaner if possible. Make sure that you clean all sides of the actual eye protection, and then use a toothbrush to clean the frames. Use microfiber to clean the lenses, and then always place them in a glass case to keep them protected at all times. Again, we just want to remind you, inspect them every single day. This is the responsibility of each employee. When it comes to our protective clothing, there are so many different types. So we are looking at your basic Conti suit, your two-piece or your overall suit that is being used on a day-to-day basis. But there are certain types of protective clothing that is needed in case of working with any type of hazardous chemical. Please remember that the selection of this type of clothing has to be based on a risk assessment. The type of chemical will determine the type of resistant material that you need to be using for protective clothing. But in any case, many different types of protective clothing that we used can be cleaned in relatively the same way. But do not use this as your guideline. Use the manufacturer's documentation on how to properly care for your PPE first. So always wash it separately from any other type of clothing. Don't use chlorine or bleach. If you need to spot treat it because of any type of stain that is on there, you can use a pre-treatment, but make sure that it is approved by the manufacturer. When pre-treating it, you can then apply the detergent directly to that specific area. Rub it very gently with one piece of the fabric to the other piece of the fabric until you can see it starting to foam a little bit. You can always use a soft bristle brush if you want to scrub the area just for a little bit, just to prevent it from staining in the future as well. You can reapply the detergent that is approved by the manufacturer again, and you can chuck it into a washing machine. Some require you not to put it in a washing machine. Again, check the manufacturer's standards. Many can be machine washed. Please remember, you cannot use this for any type of personal protective equipment clothing that has been contaminated with blood-borne pathogens or infectious diseases or any type of hazardous materials. This must be decontaminated. If not discarded completely, make sure that you follow the recommendations from the manufacturer. Again, this can also be with any type of asbestos or hazardous chemical substance. Now, the last type of personal protective equipment that we wear is safety boots. Now, foot protection is vital because it really helps our feet, it helps our bodies, it helps our back, our neck. Safety boots actually go a long way in helping us ergonomically as well. But it does protect us from falling objects, punctures, cutting hazards, even electrical hazards, slips, trips and falls, burns, and protection from extreme weather. So do not underestimate your safety boots. They are taking a huge impact every single day. So make sure you care for it properly. If it is leather boots, use leather cleaner. Rub it into the surface to remove any dirt and stains, and then wipe it off with a clean, dry towel and let them dry completely. Do not immerse them directly into water because the leather boots do not like water so much. Then make sure that you rub some sort of leather oil in to keep the leather moist and in good condition. If it is a non-leather boot, which many of us are using, then you can rinse it thoroughly with plain water, removing any dirt, and then use a soft cloth to wipe any dirt or surface dirt away from your boots. Then if you want to, you can use a little bit of dishwashing liquid if you want to in the water. It's not too dangerous. It can protect the outside of your shoe, and you can put them in there to soak. Just remember, you don't want to get the inside of the shoe wet, so it's just the outside of the shoe. But we can clean the inside with a soft brush just to get any dangers of dirt or any type of sweat from those boots out, and then remember to air them out as much as possible. But for any type of PPE that you are going to be using, remember you want to look at the specific job and the specific site that you are working in. Many may require a specific type of hard hat, so certain types of overalls, a type of safety boot, or safety goggles, glasses, or even a face shield. Many will have hearing protection, safety gloves, or even a full body harness that is mandatory. So remember, always check the area, environment, and task you are performing. Well, thank you very much for that toolbox talk. This just brings us to the very last section. We don't want to take too much of your time. This just came to us from Adele Niemann from WSP. I'd like to say thank you very much to her for bringing this to our attention. But did you know that on the 18th of September this year, South Africans were quick to respond with a witty humor to the Constitutional Court judgment legalizing cannabis use in our country. Now, it did say that we have the right to cultivate, possess, and use cannabis in private. However, they went a step further, not only to limit the use of cannabis in one's private dwelling, but it also declared that citizens have the right to consume cannabis in private, which means this implies that one may consume cannabis at places other than at one's house, as long as it is not in public. So, many of us welcomed this decision. Many of us were confused and concerned. So 2 questions that I'd like to ask you, and if you'd like to interact with me a little bit more on this, we'd like to get some more information. Does the fact that one will have the right to private consumption of cannabis imply that employers will have to amend their policies and disciplinary codes? A second question, will it be in future permissible for employees to report for duty after consuming cannabis and to have it in their possession in a workplace? Remember, it does last for up to 6 days in your system. All right, so we do have some great information that came from Adele Niemann from WSP on this, and if you'd like that information, I'm willing to forward it through to you. Adele, I hope that you don't mind. I would like to send this information to all of our listeners this morning. But if you have any questions, comments, or some suggestions on this, please send it through to us. But we look forward to seeing you next week when we are going to discuss the topic for next week, falling objects, and how we can prevent ourselves from this dangerous risk. Sean, I'm going to hand it over back to you, and sorry that I went a minute over time there.
No, that's perfect. Right, guys, Chris, we do have one question for you this morning. It reads, what would be the best way to mark a hard hat with regards to a name or number so that we know whose hard hat it is?
Thank you very much for that question. Appreciate that, Sean, and from our attendee this morning. So the best way to mark your hard hat would be on the inside of the shell. Many of them come with a stuck on sticker from the actual manufacturer that says this hard hat belongs to, and then you can use a permanent marker to write on that sticker that has already been designed by the manufacturer to be on there. And this is on the inside of the hard hat, not on the outside of the hard hat, and that can be used at any time. If it doesn't come with a sticker, please just consult the manufacturer. They will often give you a sticker, or they will say to you that any type of sticker will be able to be fitted onto the inside of that hard hat, and you can write your name on that. Thank you very much, Sean.
All right, perfect. Well, guys, that is all of the questions we have got for this morning. So I am going to go ahead and end off the session. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I hope to see everyone at the same time next week, Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Bye-bye.